Ever had a Karen measure your permit at dawn paper slap? Mine showed up with a clipboard and a flashlight claiming my county permit didn't count because HOA rules outrank the law. The neighbors watched as she wrote fines like autographs, bold, shaky, desperate. Radio, click. But that's when the records started rolling our fax logs, state seals, and the permit. I filed myself. The porch light flicked on bright as truth, and her pen finally stopped. Gavel drop. Next week, that same paper she mocked became the order that shut her whole clubhouse down. It was 3:17 a.m. when the chime above my front door clicked once and went still. For a second, I thought it was the wind. Then I saw a sheet of yellow paper slide through the gap beneath the door and drift down onto the mat. I bent to pick it up. The words were printed in all caps, bold as a warrant. Notice of violation. Work without permit. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped all night. The porch camera blinked red, catching the reflection of the HOA logo at the bottom of the page. Lewin Lakes Homeowners Association. Compliance Division. I stood there in my undershirt, reading by the kitchen light, wondering how a neighborhood board thought it could outrank the county building office. Behind me, Judy's voice came from the hallway. "Jay, what is it now?" I handed her the notice. "They're saying the porch repair wasn't permitted." She rubbed her eyes. "We paid for that permit last month. County signed it," I said. "Stamped and sealed." Judy frowned. "They can't override the county, you know that." I did know. But the HOA had a way of acting like their word was law. By 8, the sun had turned the wet street silver. At the diner, off Main, George Miller was already in his usual booth, hands wrapped around a chipped mug. "Morning, Jay. You look like hell," he said. I laid the paper on the table. The waitress leaned over it, whistled low. "Another one," George muttered. I nodded. "Same header, same thread of fines." He chuckled dryly. "Karen Henderson's on a roll. She fined me for parking too close to the curb, said it was a line-of-sight obstruction." The waitress snorted. "She fines for breathing wrong." We all laughed, but there was a pulse under the humor, a tired kind of anger. I folded the paper carefully and slid it back into my jacket. The sound of the vinyl booth creaked as I stood. "She wants a fight," I said. George shook his head. "She wants control." Back home, I set the notice on the kitchen table next to a stack of old receipts. Judy was on the phone, calm but firm. Her voice the way it used to be when she managed the post office counter. "Yes, this is Carter at 814 Maple. We have a county permit issued on the 6th. Yes, stamped." She listened for a moment, then nodded at me. "They said it's valid. No record of any issue." I exhaled a small, quiet victory. Still, the paper on the table didn't feel harmless. Its wording wasn't a mistake, it was a challenge. The porch camera pinged. A delivery truck rolled by, and I caught my reflection in the screen. 59 Gray, at the temple's eyes, tired but steady. I opened the file cabinet in the corner and slid the notice into a clear sleeve marked "Filed 4/12/07, 03/17." Judy smiled faintly. "You keeping trophies now?" "Evidence," I said. At noon, the neighborhood email thread lit up. Compliance reminder Karen had written. "Unapproved structures will incur daily penalties effective immediately." I typed back a single line. "Permit attached. Please confirm receipt." The read receipt came within seconds, then silence. Outside, the clouds broke and light poured over the cul-de-sac. For a moment, it looked peaceful again. Lawns, trimmed flags, still sprinklers ticking. But the quiet felt staged, like everyone was waiting to see who'd blink first. I poured another cup of coffee and stared through the window. I'd spent 30 years in federal service, the kind of job where rules mattered, where signatures meant something. And now, a homeowners association wanted to rewrite that order with a clipboard and a tone of authority. The phone rang, unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Mr. Carter, this is Karen Henderson, president of the board." Her voice was clipped polite on the surface. "We haven't received your proof of permit. I just emailed it." "Yes? Well, we require a printed copy within 48 hours. Otherwise, penalties will apply." "That's not how jurisdiction works," I said. She paused, then dropped her voice half an octave. Failure to comply will incur penalties. Click. The line went dead. I stood still for a long moment. The porch camera chimed once more, beep, as if marking the end of something. I stepped outside. The air smelled of rain and cold metal. On the welcome mat lay another envelope smaller this time with the same HOA letterhead. I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I looked down the street at the other houses, every mailbox identical. Every flag at half-mast for Veterans Day week, and wondered how many of them had yellow papers tucked inside their doors tonight. "It's just procedure," Karen said, hugging a clipboard like it was a badge. She didn't step over the threshold, just stood in the doorway with the morning mist jeweling her blazer eyes, flat, voice smooth. "Your porch repair may be permitted by the county, Mr. Carter, but the association has standards. We'll need an HOA-approved copy by close of business." Judy slid beside me with a steaming mug. "We emailed it at 3:17, she said. "Certified. Server receipt attached." "Email is informal," Karen replied. "Not when it carries a county hash and a timestamp," Judy said. Karen's smile thinned. "Failure to comply will incur penalties." I finished. She glanced up at the little porch camera. The red LED blinked twice, beep, beep, as if it were bored of all this. Karen pivoted and left heels ticking down the wet walkway in neat, measured beats. I shut the door and felt the house exhale. Judy set her mug down and rolled her shoulders. "We're building a wall of paper," she said. "Brick by brick." The kitchen lights were bright enough to make the laminate gleam. Our old printer warmed with a soft rrr, and the smell of dark roast drew a line under the morning. Judy pulled a clean folder, wrote "Karen File" across the tab, and opened her laptop with a click that sounded like a plan locking into place. "Chronology," she said. "Every contact in order. Attachments behind the tabs. Your notice goes first. Permit and seal next." I laid the yellow "Notice of Violation" on the table, then set the county permit beside it, the raised seal catching light like a coin at the bottom of a fountain. My name, the parcel number, the inspector's signature in blue ink. It should have been the end of the conversation. Somehow, it felt like the beginning. George called. I hit speaker. "You get another love letter?" he asked. "New flavor," I said. "Now, email doesn't count." "I've got a mystery line on my dues invoice," he said. "Vendor services, night patrol something." Judy snapped her fingers. "Forward it." 2 minutes later, the PDF bloomed on her screen. She rotated the laptop so we could all see. Vendor Night Patrol, LLC. State License Number 4129. "I know that format," Judy murmured. She slid to a state licensing site and typed. The page loaded in patient blues and grays. "Here." Her finger settled on the line mouth going into that hard, tidy shape I respected and feared equally. "License number 4129 expired 3 months ago." Silence came in like fog. The printer fan whispered. Somewhere down the street a screen door slapped its frame and the sound came thin through the rain. "So, the board's vendor is out of compliance," I said. And still, billing Judy answered. George whistled. "Is that fraud?" "At minimum, misrepresentation," Judy said. "And any patrol action, while expired, voidable." I looked at the permit again, then at the word "expired" on the laptop. "How do we put this where they can't ignore it?" "We don't argue in email threads," Judy said. "We place it in records." She pulled up a template, one I'd seen in a dozen old postal disputes. "We fax a formal request for clarification to the board and the property manager. Cite the statute, attach the county permit, and the licensing page highlight the date. 48 hours for a written response." She typed, letting the keys do the talking, subject request for clarification. Permit on record versus HOA. Demand, attachments. County, permit, sealed state license, number 4129. Status, screenshot. Request, identify, HOA, authority for demand. Confirm vendor status. Paper beats bluff, she said half to herself. "Keep it under 20 words, I told her. "Please," she said smiling. I ran a federal counter for 20 years. The printer began its steady work. I collated pages and fed them to the fax machine, the old square thing glowing like a faithful lighthouse on a gray coast. I lifted the handset. The tone held clean and even. "Lines clear?" Judy asked. "Clear." Halfway through my phone buzzed. Voicemail, unknown caller. I thumbed it on speaker. Karen's voice unfurled into our kitchen, precise and cool. "Mr. Carter, this is a courtesy call. Next time we'll bring the patrol to verify on site." A small, satisfied click ended the message like a finger closing a rulebook. George's laugh was more air than sound. "Patrol. What are they going to verify? With expired paper?" "Exactly what we're asking," Judy said. The fax motor rose, then settled. The machine spat a narrow strip with black block letters across the bottom. "Transmission, OK, 0317. I held the receipt. The heat of the paper bled into my fingers. Judy slid it into a clear sleeve and clipped it to the front of the Karen file. "Now we wait for their words in writing," she said. "Save that invoice, George," I added. "If they argue, we show the chain." "You got it," he said. "And Jay, tell Judy that paper beats bluff is poster-worthy." "She heard you," I said. Judy didn't look up, but I saw the corner of her mouth admit it. We hung up. The refrigerator hummed. Light pushed through the blinds in tidy rails and striped the paperwork like ruled paper, a place where handwriting has to behave. My phone rang again. Blocked. I let it die in the air. The fax blinked twice and went still. Judy capped her marker, leaned her hip against the counter, and watched me slide the county permit into the very front of the file, where anyone with eyes would have to see it first. "They can drag us into meetings," she said. "We'll drag them into records." I nodded. Outside, a delivery cart rattled across the sidewalk. The porch camera answered with a soft beep. I stood the Karen file upright so the spine faced the door, a small, quiet signpost for anyone thinking the house behind it was disorganized. The kitchen fell into that careful calm. Homes get after a storm, nothing broken. Everything damp, the air tasting faintly of coffee and ink. Somewhere in the neighborhood a dog barked once and gave up. I checked the permit one more time, the seal catching light and throwing it back, and felt the first clean inch of ground under my feet. The fax chirped a final time beep. Click. Our first piece of evidence stood on its own. Sergeant Cole swung out of the county cruiser and shut the door with a soft thunk that sounded like punctuation. "HOA is not law, Mr. Carter," he said, tipping his chin toward the glass doors of the county office. "They can write notices all day. They don't issue permits." The parking lot still held last night's rain in shallow mirror puddles. The flag on the pole across the lawn tugged once and stilled. I nodded, hands in my jacket, the yellow notice folded down to the size of a playing card. Judy stood beside me with a folder pressed to her ribs, the way Karen held her clipboard. Same posture, different purpose. Inside, the lobby hummed with fluorescence and the smell of damp paper. A metal rack held free brochures. Tree trimming water usage, a pamphlet on retaining walls with a photo of a smiling couple from some better neighborhood. On the far wall, a corkboard bulletin board carried a sun-faded poster, "Know Your Jurisdiction." Someone had underlined jurisdiction with a dull red Sharpie. Cole's boots clicked once on the tile. "Let's keep this on record." He pushed the service bell. Somewhere in the back, a printer coughed. Karen arrived the way weather moves, and first a draft of cooler air through the door, then the shape of her crisp blazer hair set like a plan. Trailing behind her was a man I didn't recognize at first, stocky, nervous Apollo with a stitched shield that read Night Patrol. He carried himself like a security guard on his first day at a library. "Mr. Carter," Karen said as if we were in some bland commercial. "Sergeant," Ms. Henderson Cole replied, "we're here to confirm a permit and clarify your vendor's status." Judy set the Karen file on the counter and opened it to the page with the raised county seal. "This is our permit," she said. "Stamped, signed, issued last month. Your notice says work without permit." Karen did not look at Judy. She looked at me, then at Cole, and then at the man in the night patrol polo. "Barry," she said softly, "show the invoice." Barry fumbled a folded printout from his pocket. I could read the header upside down: Vendor Services Night Patrol, LLC State License, number 4129. His thumb worried a crease into the corner as if the paper might forgive him. Cole tilted his head. That license current, Barry. Barry tried a smile and found it slippery. We're, in renewal. Judy slid her laptop onto the counter, spun it around, and tapped the trackpad. A state web page blinked awake. According to the Department of Public Safety License number 4129, expired 3 months ago. She pointed to the date, the kind of date you don't argue with. Barry's face folded a little. His hands found each other and nodded. We submitted the fee. Expired is expired, Cole said calmly. If you're operating without a state license. Karen finally glanced at the screen. Something tight moved along her jaw and stayed there. This is administrative trifling, she said. The board has standards. The county has law, Cole answered. Standards don't outrank statutes. I reached into my jacket and laid our permit on the counter next to the invoice. The paper looked more solid in the ugly lobby light, the raised seal catching the fluorescence like a shallow moon. This is what the law looks like, I said. Ink and seal, not door chimes and envelopes at 3 a.m. Karen's smile returned thinner. She reached for the permit copy we'd made, the one without the raised seal, and slipped it out from beneath the sleeve before I could say anything. The move was practiced, almost dainty. Then, with 2 delicate pulls, she tore the copy in half. Gasps would have been dramatic. The room gave us a paper sound, instead 2 short zips. The halves fell like tired leaves. I crouched and gathered the pieces, set them on the counter, aligned the rips the way you align a map that's been in the glove box too long. That's still evidence, I said, not looking up. Judy took a slow breath through her nose the way she used to with people who wanted to mail fireworks. We're done arguing in doorways, she said. We put everything into record. Cole nodded once. Let's put it in now. He slid a fax cover sheet across to state, Inspector Consumer Affairs, Public Safety. Judy filled the fields with the neat block letters, attached the permit, the screenshot of the license page, and the HOA notice. I fed the stack into the machine on the back counter. The old unit whirred like a patient animal happy to have a job. The tone locked clean. Digits marched on a green display. We stood there, all of us listening to a sound that belonged to a different decade. Barry shifted his weight. Karen watched the progress line creep like it owed her something. The machine's tiny screen blinked. 1 square became another. The air conditioner clicked on, rattled, and steadied. Cole folded his arms and read the corkboard rules again, not because he had to, but because it was the sort of thing a person like him did when it mattered. A clerk in a cardigan emerged from the back with a stapler and the kind of kindness only found in county offices and church basements. "You folks doing okay?" she asked. "We will be," Judy said. The machine chirped and spit a thin slip into the tray. I pulled it free with more ceremony than it deserved and read the footer. Received. 4/12/07/03/17. Judy smiled with only her eyes. Cole gave a single nod as if the county itself had just shaken our hands. Barry leaned over the counter, hope and dread arguing behind his eyes. "So what happens now?" "Now you get compliant," Cole said, "and the board stops pretending to be the state." Karen tapped the counter with 1 painted nail, a gentle scold to the laminate. "Our covenants empower the board to enforce standards," she said, every syllable buffed until it shone. "We will continue to do so. Enforce all the standards you want," Judy replied, polite as a clerk. "Just don't trespass on jurisdiction." Karen turned her head toward the ceiling corner to the little black dome of a county camera, its lens a bead of dark water. For the first time all morning, something alive sparked behind her eyes, a gleam that didn't read as anger so much as appetite. "We'll see who owns the law," she said, almost kindly, and smiled straight into the camera as if it were a person she planned to meet again. They came up my driveway like a small parade, Karen in a crisp blazer flanked by 2 men in matching blue night patrol polos. The shirts looked official from 10 feet away and like costume rental from 5. Barry hovered a step behind her, trying to look taller than his shadow. Neighbors drifted to the curb with coffee mugs and crossed arms. George stood in his yard in a ball cap, chin up, like he'd been waiting for this day since the first notice. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once and decided to spectate instead. A news van rolled to a stop by the mailbox, its mast lifting with a mechanical sigh. The camera light winked on white, flat, unforgiving. "Good morning," Karen announced as if she were christening a ship. "This is a scheduled compliance inspection." Judy stepped onto the porch beside me with the Karen file tucked to her side, the raised county seal visible through the clear front. I kept my voice even. "We have a valid county permit on record. You've seen it. Twice." Barry avoided my eyes. Karen didn't. "The association requires an HOA-approved copy," she said. "Until then, work stops." I opened the file and laid our documentation on a folding table I'd dragged onto the porch permit fax log, the state screenshot for license number 4129. Paper orderly and patient the way I like it. Judy tapped the fax slip with her pen. "Received at 0317. State Inspector in copy." A reporter stepped forward, mic wrapped in a foam windscreen hair perfect against the November air. "Ma'am," she said, addressing Karen, "could you state your authority for viewers? Is your vendor state authorized?" Karen's smile was museum quality. "The board enforces community standards." That wasn't the question, the reporter said, still friendly. "Are you state authorized to enforce building permits?" A heartbeat of quiet. The camera motor purred. Karen shifted her attention to me instead, produced a clipboard, and clicked a pen that sounded somehow like a door latch. "Stop work order," she said, sliding a duplicate form free as if the porch railing were her desk. She signed with a flourish, tore off the yellow copy, and pressed it toward me with 2 fingertips. The camera caught the pen, the signature, the HOA letterhead in full frame. "That's contrary to county jurisdiction," Judy said. "And you're operating with a vendor whose state license expired 3 months ago." Barry's throat worked. He took half a step back, then half a step forward like his shoes had differing opinions. He pulled at his collar and adjusted his polo so the night patrol shield sat straighter. From the sidewalk, someone muttered, "Looks straight to me," and a little ripple of laughter broke, then tucked itself away again. The reporter kept her mic up. "To confirm, is Night Patrol LLC, license number 4129. Current today." Karen's eyes were gentle and flat as glass. "Administrative matters are not discussed in the street." "Today," the reporter said, smiling as if asking about the weather. "Current or not?" Karen didn't answer. She pivoted her wrist and wrote another signature, this time on the served line of her own form, as if an ink trail could substitute for authority. The camera zoomed. You could almost hear the lens lean closer. From behind Karen, one of the board members, Alan, the one who always wore boat shoes with slacks, cleared his throat. "Karen," he said softly. She didn't look. He tried again, louder. "Karen." "I can't co-sign this." He turned to the reporter. "I'm resigning from the board effective immediately." He fished for keys, found a house key instead, put it back, settled for folding his arms. The neighbors shifted. A few nodded, a small sound like dry leaves moving. Karen didn't flinch. She offered the yellow stopwork to me once more. Palm-steady nails, neat. I let the paper hover between us and didn't take it. Judy held the permit so the raised seal caught the camera light. "This," she said calmly, "is the only document that controls work on this porch." A phone chimed on the reporter's belt, an email ping, bright and ordinary. Mine buzzed in my pocket at the exact same time, the small, synchronized shake of modern life. Judy glanced at her watch, then at me. I kept my eyes on Karen. "Are you state authorized?" the reporter asked again, mic up, professional patience radiating like heat. Behind the blue polos, George lifted his mug and called, not unkindly, "It's a yes or no, ma'am." Karen's smile stayed, but it stopped moving. The camera light licked across her cheek, found no angle it liked, and kept looking. Barry studied the toe of his shoe as if it might explain the law to him. I let the quiet stretch until it became its own kind of statement, then reached to the table and slid the fax receipt closer to the lens. The black block letters at the bottom, transmission. OK, 0317, looked bolder than they had in my kitchen. Paper doesn't perform for a camera. It just sits there and tells the truth. Karen drew a breath and changed her target. Mr. Carter, she said, softening, these theatrics are unnecessary. The board's goal is compliance. Same here, I said, just with the right jurisdiction. Another chime. Another buzz. The reporter glanced at her phone and raised her brows a fraction. We just received an email, she said to the camera, then to me, and I think you did too. I checked my screen. The subject line was simple in the way mountains are simple. Re-permit violation governor review. You win, Karen. I just want peace, I said, letting the words come out thin like thread pulled from a worn shirt. The little recorder inside my pen answered with a polite beep that only I could feel through my fingers. The cafe was all steel and steam. The espresso machine hissed like a kettle under pressure. Cups clinked a steady rhythm from the dish rack. On the back wall, a poster with a cheerful font declared, "Support your HOA." Someone had pinned it crooked so the bottom edge tilted order, bragging about itself in a slant. Karen slid into the booth across from me, the kind of entrance that decided the table was hers. She set her phone face down, folded her hands on the laminate, and smiled as if we'd just agreed on something important. You're doing the right thing, she said. When a neighborhood doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. No shame in moving on. I nodded, eyes down. My wife's tired. I'm tired. I'll take a loss if I have to. I don't want any more trouble. If we list, can you make sure the board doesn't, complicate it? A three-note hiss, clack hiss from the espresso wand punctuated the space between us. In my ear, Judy's voice was a thread of calm from the radio bud. You're doing great. Let her fill the silence. Karen leaned in half an inch, lowering her voice, inviting me to do the same. I know investors who buy fast, she said. No inspections, no open houses, no drama. I let out a shaky breath I didn't have to fake. That would help. I just don't want your patrol showing up. The last 2 weeks have been... She waved a small dismissive hand. That was about standards. And frankly, my vendor overreached. Your vendor, I repeated, letting the phrase sit there like a coin on the table. She glanced toward the counter where the barista was drawing a leaf into a latte. Then she reached for the napkin dispenser and pulled one free with the tidy efficiency of someone who never tears paper crooked. From her purse, a pen appeared, a slender silver thing that seemed designed to say, I came prepared. Let me give you a name, she said, writing as she spoke. The pen tip whispered across the napkin fibers. Night Patrol, LLC. State license number 4129, 2A and Fry, 1, 3 a.m. She paused, met my eyes, then added almost playfully, Barry's an idiot. Fear fixes compliance. My heartbeat ticked in time with the wall clock, tick, tick. I kept my face open and slightly grateful the way a man looks when he thinks a storm might finally be moving off his roof. Those are their usual patrol windows. She continued, tapping the times with her nail. I'll have them lay off your street once we're in contract. Focus elsewhere. Elsewhere, I said softly as if testing a new word. In my ear, Frank's voice low gravel, a PI's lullaby. Hold the line, Jay. Keep her talking. Karen's posture loosened now that she was narrating. We've had issues, she went on, choosing her dictionary carefully. Some families resist what's best for the community. Order requires a little pressure. Most people don't respond to emails. They respond to presence. I glanced at the poster on the wall. Support your HOA watched over us like a polite threat. And if we cooperate, I asked no presents. She gave me the kind of smile I imagine she practices in the mirror, firm, magnanimous like a judge who prefers warnings to fines. If you sell to the right buyer, the board prefers to be invisible. I let a beat pass, swallowed, made myself a little smaller in the seat. All I want is invisible, I said. I don't sleep when I hear that porch camera beep anymore. Her pen hovered over the napkin. "I'll connect you to an acquisitions group. They're discreet." She scribbled a phone number, then a pair of initials below it, KH, and dotted the H like a promise. The napkin looked like a map, now all lines leading back to her. "Thank you," I said, and meant it not the gratitude but the clarity. The pen in my hand warmed slightly, then gave another tiny beep of approval. A barista set a cappuccino between us. The cup clicked against the saucer. A dusting of cocoa trembled on the foam, then settled. Karen didn't touch her drink. She watched me instead, measuring. "You understand, Mr. Carter?" She said softer still that peace is a byproduct of compliance. When people resist, they force the board's hand. It's not personal. I nodded again, let my voice scrape just enough to sound worn. "I get it." Judy's whisper in my ear. "Ask her to confirm the license." I pointed to the napkin, keeping my finger casual. License number still current. Karen's mouth made an amused little notch. Paperwork drifts. The state site isn't always updated day of. She dotted another I in the margin that didn't need dotting. "The point is, they take direction." "From you," I said, making it a compliment. "From the board," she corrected, but she didn't move her eyes from mine as she said it. There was a thin, valuable silence then, the kind that seals a deal and ruins an alibi. The clock obligingly filled it with tick-tick. I let it stand. You don't talk over a confession. You frame it. I picked up the napkin like it might fall apart, careful, grateful, and slid it into my jacket where the recorder wouldn't brush against it. "I'll tell my wife," I said. "She just wants me to stop waking up when the camera chirps." Karen reached for her phone at last and flipped it over, checking nothing. "I'll text the introduction in an hour," she said. After that, things move quickly. I stood aiming for a clumsy little bump against the table so the pen could catch one last vibration. It obliged with a soft beep I felt in the bones of my hand. "Thank you," I said again. She gave me the practiced smile one more time. "You're doing the right thing." The bell over the cafe door chimed when I pushed out into the pale, honest light. The air tasted like cold milk in traffic. I walked 3 steps past the window and stopped beside the planter where the rosemary bushes tried their best to be elegant in November. J. Frank said, materializing from the sedan like a folded suit coming off a hanger. His voice was low enough to anchor me. He tapped his earbud once, then my jacket pocket with 2 knuckles. "We got her." The high school cafeteria looked nothing like the place I'd voted in or watched talent shows. Tonight, it felt like a courtroom built out of folding chairs. Rows of metal legs squeaked on the linoleum as neighbors filled every inch from the vending machines to the trophy case. The overhead lights buzzed, and the projector on its rolling cart hummed a patient tone, throwing a blank gray rectangle on the wall. At the front, the board table gleamed under too much light. Karen sat in the middle, papers fanned before her like a set of cards she'd already won. 2 empty chairs on either side of her told a quiet story, resignations unannounced. I could see the reporter near the exit camera, already aimed red tally light steady. The air smelled like floor wax and tension. Judy was beside me, calm as always, one hand on the cart where the laptop waited. In her other hand she held a small USB drive labeled in bold black ink, Playback. She caught my eye, nodded once, and waited for the cue. Karen tapped the microphone. The sound came out as a hollow thud. "Let's bring this meeting to order," she said. "First item, ongoing compliance reviews." I stood. "Before you start," I said, "I have questions about Lewin Property Ventures." The crowd quieted on instinct. Karen didn't look up. Public comment follows the treasurer's report. "This is public," I said, "and it concerns every homeowner here." The mic on the podium crackled as I walked to it. The metal was cool under my palm. For months, I said, this board has issued notices for supposed permit violations. We provided proof county permits stamped and sealed. Yet the board's chosen vendor, Night Patrol, LLC, continued to enter properties, post warnings, and issue stop work orders. I paused. That vendor's state license number 4129 expired 3 months ago. Whispers spread in waves. In the second row, George adjusted his cap, jaw set. Karen's smile stayed tight. "This isn't the forum for grievances." Then Make It One, a woman near the back said, We're done paying dues for threats. The reporter raised her mic slightly. The red light glowed brighter. I nodded to Judy. She stepped forward, slid the USB into the port, and tapped the spacebar. The projector blinked a wake blue screen, then a file name, HOA, Sting, Playback, MP3. A beat of static. Then Karen's own voice filled the speakers clear as glass. Barry's an idiot. Fear fixes compliance. The room didn't breathe for 2 seconds. Then came a collective sound, half gasp, half growl. Someone muttered, "She said that," and another voice answered, "Sure did." Karen straightened, chin lifted. "That's out of context," she said. Judy clicked to the next slide. On the wall appeared the photo of the napkin, the fibers blown up until they looked like roads on a map. Across it, in unmistakable handwriting, Night Patrol, LLC, State License, number 4129, 2A, and Fry 1, 3 a.m. Underneath the initials, KH. "That's your signature," Judy said quietly into her mic. Karen turned to the reporter. "I'm not obligated to explain informal notes." "Then explain this," I said, pulling a copy of the invoice from my folder. "Payments authorized by your office to an unlicensed contractor." The crowd erupted. Chairs scraped, people talking over one another. For the first time, Karen's pen trembled. The side door opened. The noise dulled on its own. Sergeant Cole entered, followed by a woman in a gray suit carrying a blue folder with the state seal. Cole's badge gleamed in the projector light. He walked to the front and addressed the microphone. "Sergeant Cole, County Compliance Division," he said. "We're here on a joint order from the Governor's Office and the Department of Public Safety." Karen laughed once short dry. "Is this theatrics?" Cole ignored her and opened the folder. The woman beside him flipped a page steady-handed. "By order of the Governor," Cole read, voice deep enough to silence the room. "The Department of Public Safety hereby revokes the state license number 4129 of Night Patrol LLC, effective immediately." Murmurs burst like popcorn, neighbors turning whispering, clapping before catching themselves. Cole continued, "All actions taken by Night Patrol under said license are suspended pending review. Any associated enforcement by the Lewin Lakes Homeowners Association is void." Karen's mouth parted closed, then opened again. "This is premature," she said. "We haven't had a hearing." "You're having one now," George called. Applause followed, uneven but loud enough to make the ceiling tiles tremble. Judy held the microphone and added, "The board's authority ends where the law begins." "You've crossed that line." Karen rose, palms on the table. "You're twisting community standards into—" A voice from the crowd cut her off. "Standards don't need midnight patrols." The reporter caught it all. The camera light glowed white, finding faces, anger, relief, vindication. The lens turned back to Karen just as the compliance officer approached the table. She placed a single page in front of her formal notice of revocation and said quietly, "For the record, served." The room clapped again, louder this time. The chant started near the center. One voice, then 5, then 50. "Justice. Justice." I looked at Judy. She didn't chant. She just breathed slow. Steady, a smile flickering at the corners like someone hearing the end of a long argument that finally went her way. Cole waited until the sound began to settle. "Residents who received unauthorized citations," he said, "please see the clerk at the back. We'll read each case into record and clear the liens." Karen stared at the blue folder as if it might dissolve under her glare. The projector light made a halo on her papers, highlighting the now irrelevant seal of her office. Judy pressed a key. The wall behind us filled with the state letterhead, bold and unmistakable. Phones came up like a forest screens, catching proof before anyone could rewrite it. The reporter narrated into her mic. "Tonight, in Lewin County, residents confronted their HOA board over unauthorized enforcement. The rest was swallowed by applause." When it ebbed, I leaned toward the microphone one last time. "For the record," I said, "we never needed fear to comply. We needed law." The line held for a moment. The projector fan whirred louder, then dimmed. The blue folder closed with a soft click. Karen sat down slowly, as if the chair had grown unfamiliar. Around her, the board members stared at their own hands. The chant faded into the hum of the projector cooling. Chairs squeaked as people stood not to leave, but to exhale. Outside, through the cafeteria windows, the flag over the parking lot moved once in a late breeze and settled again. Cole nodded at me a quiet acknowledgement and stepped aside to let the compliance officer exit first. The blue folder under her arm looked smaller now, but the weight of it was enough to bend a few rules back into shape. The projector bulb clicked off. Darkness folded around the room for a heartbeat before the fluorescent lights came back to life, too bright, too real. And in that brief silence before people started talking again, before the cameras powered down, it felt like the whole town finally exhaled the same word, justice. The diner TV glowed with that morning blue tint reserved for local triumphs. The ticker at the bottom read, Governor revokes security vendor's license residence vindicated. Above it played a still frame of our town hall, a sea of folding chairs. Karen's face frozen mid-blink, and the state seal projected behind her like judgment in pixels. At our house, the air smelled of dark coffee and rain-damp newspaper. Judy sat cross-legged on the couch, envelope in hand. The seal on its flap gleamed in blue relief, State of Lewin. She tore it open with care, the way she handled every official paper since this began. "Read it," I said. She did. Mr. and Mrs. Carter. Your documentation and persistence led to corrective action by this office. On behalf of the governor, thank you for your service as engaged citizens. Please share this notice with affected residents. The words sounded heavier than their size. We'd sent hundreds of pages certified, faxed, filed. Now a single page was sending something back acknowledgement. The phone buzzed. Sergeant Cole. You've probably seen the coverage, he said when I answered. License 4129's officially dead. All HOA enforcement tied to night patrol void. Refund orders are going out by Friday. Judy leaned toward the speaker. Refunds for everyone. Every fine, every lien, based on that contract, Cole said. And a memo's already pinned at the clubhouse. All enforcement actions relying on Night Patrol LLC are void. Thought you'd want the wording right. We do, I said. Thanks for calling. He chuckled softly. Don't thank me. Thank your record keeping. The law moves fastest when it's cornered by paper. When the call ended, the room fell into a new kind of quiet, not the waiting kind, but the aftermath that makes you aware of clocks again. The TV kept playing interviews, neighbors smiling like they weren't sure if it was allowed yet. By mid-morning, George knocked. He came in holding 2 envelopes and the local bulletin folded under his arm. Sarah followed with a stroller and that wide, tired grin young parents carry like proof of life. They printed this already, George said, handing me the bulletin. The front page carried a photo of him shaking Cole's hand under the town seal. Below it, the headline, Lewin, HOA, Board to Reimburse Residents Interim Election, announced. They want me to sit in until March, he added, eyes half proud, half stunned. Said we need someone who can tell a fence rule from a felony. Judy laughed, the kind that carried 6 weeks of withheld oxygen. Congratulations, Chairman George. Sarah unfolded her letter. Refund confirmation. They even apologized for the misunderstanding. Can you believe that word still works? George lowered his coffee cup. Believe it or not, I can. Outside, the clouds had thinned into white streamers. Light came through the blinds and the stripes across the dining table. Judy spread out the governor's letter beside our original permit creases, meeting like 2 chapters finally aligned. Same paper stock, she murmured. State uses the same supplier. Then frame them together, I said. Proof we weren't wrong for trusting ink. She fetched the wooden frame from the hallway, the one that once held our daughter's graduation photo. The glass clinked softly as she set it down. She slipped the permit to the left, the governor's letter to the right, adjusting each corner until they touched like mirrors. George watched her seal the back. You keeping that here or hanging it at the clubhouse? Both, she said. First copy's ours, the rest public record. Mr. Henderson arrived as she spoke, cane tapping a slow rhythm. He glanced at the frame and nodded. Looks like the right people finally wrote the last word. Not the last I said, just the one that matters. He smiled, lowering himself onto the sofa. My wife used to say government only works when someone reminds it to. Guess you reminded it. Judy placed the frame on the mantel. The blue seals caught the morning light, two circles reflecting each other, county and state citizen and law, locked in quiet agreement. For the first time in months, the room felt ordinary again. Not triumphant, not loud, just steady. Outside, the sound of the hammer echoed from the clubhouse bulletin board where George was already posting the memo himself. All enforcement actions relying on Night Patrol LLC are void. When he stepped back, the paper fluttered once in the breeze and stayed. Judy poured 2 mugs of coffee and handed me one. Think they'll learn from it? She asked. Maybe, I said, watching sunlight glance off the frame. If they don't, we'll remind them again. She nodded, leaning against my shoulder. The TV behind us replayed the headline one more time, Residents Vindicated. And for once, the words didn't sound like someone else's story. The afternoon wind carried that soft, restless sound. Only November makes half chill, half comfort. The porch chime clicked twice, then fell silent again, as if even the wind knew it was time to be quiet. The neighborhood had changed its rhythm. Fewer cars, slower steps. No more patrol uniforms cutting through the dark. Just the low hum of life returning to itself. Judy stepped out with the frame in her hands, careful like she was holding a window to something fragile. Inside, the county permit and the governor's letter sat perfectly aligned under glass, 2 stamps glowing faintly gold in the late light. Here's to symmetry, she said. I took the small hammer, found the spot above the porch bench, and tapped the nail home with a sound that was more final than loud. The frame went up with a quiet click. The glass caught the sunlight, throwing a small reflection across the floorboards. That's it, I said. The paper that started the fight and the one that ended it. Judy tilted her head, studying the display like a curator. They belong together. Across the street, the new sign in front of the clubhouse gleamed white, Be a Good Neighbor. Estata 2024. The paint was still fresh, the edges clean. It replaced the old compliance-required board that used to glare like an order. The air smelled of cut grass and a hint of barbecue smoke from George's yard. Somewhere, a radio carried faint static between country songs. You could tell the world had exhaled. Judy lowered herself onto the porch swing beside me, and the old cedar gave its familiar groan. The ropes creaked steady as breathing. For the first time in months, the sound wasn't about waiting. It was about staying. You know, she said, brushing hair from her face, I didn't think peace would feel like this. Not loud, not proud, just clean. It's the kind that sticks, I said. Earned quiet. She smiled, leaning back. Finally, someone fought back lawfully. I met her eyes, then the frame. And the law answered. The words didn't need volume. They carried themselves like truth spoken into air that's already listening. We watched the sky slide into that amber shade that makes everything look slightly older, slightly softer. Kids' laughter floated from down the street, some game involving chalk lines and imagination. The flag by the school caught the last sunbeam and lifted once proud but unpretentious. George's truck rumbled past his arm out the window in an easy wave. Judy waved back with 2 fingers, the kind of shorthand neighbors used when they didn't need words anymore. I heard the refund checks came today, she said. They did? I nodded. County courier dropped them off at the clubhouse. They even used real envelopes this time. No red stamps, no warnings. She laughed. Imagine that. Paper doing something good for once. I leaned back, letting the swing's motion slow itself. The shadows stretched longer, the porch railing striped in light. You think Karen will ever apologize? Maybe not out loud, she said, but she'll know. Silence has its own confession. The chime clicked again, a gentle punctuation mark. I thought about all the sounds that used to fill this porch, the midnight arguments, the echo of that first notice hitting the floor. Now it was just wind and the steady creak of the swing keeping time. Every small sound felt right-sized again. Inside the mantel held a second copy of the frame, permit, and letter side by side. Through the window, their reflection glowed faintly two seals mirroring the flag outside. County and state, citizen and law. Each had done its job finally in tune. "You realize," Judy said softly, "we made a record, not a rebellion." "Records last longer," I said. The last of the sunlight slipped through the trees and struck the glass above us. It hit the top edge first, then spread across both documents like a closing argument. The ink on the word "approved" caught fire for half a heartbeat, glowing bright enough to read without squinting. Judy whispered, "Look at that." I nodded. Proof the day ended right. The swing slowed. Crickets began their night chorus steady and kind. The chime barely stirred now, one faint click and done. A breeze moved across the porch and carried the scent of coffee from the kitchen. For a long while, neither of us spoke. There was nothing left to argue, no more letters to send, no signatures to chase. The world didn't owe us applause. It owed us only this, the space to breathe. I took Judy's hand. "Quiet," I said almost to myself. "Earned," she finished. We sat that way until the last orange of the sky turned blue, until the porch light came on by timer, and until the word on the glass "permit approved" stood alone in its square of light, glowing steady as a heartbeat. The last light slid across our porch, glinting on the framed permit and state seal, both steady under glass. The wind carried the smell of coffee and distant barbecue softer now, like the town had finally unclenched. We didn't win by shouting. We won by showing the record by standing where rules meet reason. That quiet moment flag moving slow, seal shining, was proof that order can heal what anger breaks. Justice isn't loud, it's steady. Finally, someone fought back. Share your HOA story below your map might help someone redraw theirs.